Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Stacey Moore.
Stacey, what movie are we going to overanalyze this week?
This week we're overanalyzing A Quiet Place, the new horror/suspense thriller from The Office's John Krasinski, also starring Krasinski and his wife Emily Blunt. The movie is about a family in a rural community who are trying to survive in the wake of an unseen force that, if you make a noise, it annihilates you and basically eviscerates you instantaneously.
Yes.
I was stumbling through that because I'm not sure how much we're supposed to spoil, but I guess we should just dive right into it. What do we think?
So let me preface this by saying this half of the podcast is all you, Stacey, because in order to really give a good sort of critical review, you have to have your critic's hat on while you're watching the movie.
Oh no!
I was in sheer terror. Like 100% sheer terror the entire time. I was like half an hour into the movie, I was like, I needed to stop. Like, I need a break. Somebody let me off this ride. Like, oh,
I don't want to play no more.
I know. So the movie ends. I'm sandwiched between co-host Garrett and co-host Christopher, because I made them come with me so I wouldn't grab strangers in the movie. And I'm just like dying. And Christopher's like, are you all right? And I'm like, no!
No, I am not all right. Nothing is all right.
And he's like, waits 30 seconds. He's like, are you all right, Nicole? I'm like, no! Like, that answer's not going to change. Like, I'm not okay.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. It was like, I wanted to call in sick the next day. I was like, can I call in sick and be like, the movie I watched last night was too scary.
And I need to leave for that. Personal leave.
I need to recover. I was beside myself. So I don't have like a whole lot of analytical things to say.
Well, I mean, I think we could take that. Well, actually, I'm not sure. Is that a good review? That's like a full out recommendation, right? That's a wholehearted recommendation as a horror film. But at the same time,
yes,
it's like you were traumatized.
I'm so
you don't really want to wish that on anyone.
Yeah, he was like, are you glad you saw it? And I was like, I don't know yet.
I don't know how I feel. I'm still processing this trauma.
Oh, I mean, I was literally like, I was so drained emotionally. I was really something like, close to 90 minutes of just adrenaline coursing through my system.
Right. I was shaking from adrenaline. I had like the shivers you get, during really heavy action scenes sometimes. I had that the entire time. I just sat there like I was freezing.
Yeah. So what did you think?
It's funny. I had a similar reaction to you. I was, and I mean, this movie does not, it just kind of comes in hot. Like there's not a lot of kind of sort of quiet, slow burn, kind of like dread build up. It just, you meet the family, it feels really ominous, and boom, like you get one of the most like disturbing scenes of violence that I've seen. I'm trying to think of like I've never seen mother exclamation point. That's the only movie that I think could have a scene more disturbing than the one this movie kicks off with. And I guess we should just be explicit. So there's not a lot of gore in this film, which I appreciated. I just don't think I could have. I don't think I could have taken that very well.
I think it was only rated PG-13. There's a lot of threat of violence.
Yes,
but consequently not as much actual violence.
Right. And well, I think also the violence that does happen, it's a almost, the in the blink of an eye, kind of a sideswipe that you just sort of see a character. This happens several times. A character is just kind of slung out of frame, and then it's implied that they were, torn to shreds or eviscerated or whatever.
I wouldn't know. I was like, I didn't see the aliens for like the first 45 minutes because I have my eyes closed.
Oh, Nicole.
I was like, I wonder what these aliens look like, but I'm not keeping my eyes open long enough to find out.
Oh, man. Did you eventually see them?
I did. I did. I mean,
and,
I was like a fetal ball wreck. Like I can't even imagine.
Jeez. Yeah. No, it's if anyone's ever seen Signs, the tone by M. Night Shyamalan, the tone is very similar, where it's very realist. Like there's not a lot of focus on, the alien itself as like, oh, like not in the sci-fi sense where it's like, oh, look at this alien. It's got like really neat, I don't know, horns or listen to me. I'm not right. Or like I'm talking about like where the wild things are or something, but it really is, the aliens are presented more as just these sort of, just threats. It's just a generic threat, and a potent one. And so we only see them sort of briefly, but they do kind of, I guess they kind of look like, they kind of look like the alien from Ridley Scott's Alien, but with like,
I was thinking that
like
too.
Giant like scythes for arms that they run on, like almost like just a terrifying crab. And then they also have these like giant like ears, like these kind of aural caverns that would open up and look like the inside of an oyster and just throb with like, supersonic bat-like geolocation. It is pretty, like it's good. It's good visually, I'd say.
Yeah, and I thought one of the things I thought they had done well was like they don't explicitly say there. So there's a lot of this like clicking and noise that the aliens make, and they never tell you they're echolocating. But you like I like they left out a lot of exposition as to where the aliens come from, what they're doing here, any of that stuff, which was great. And then they kind of left the viewer to be smart enough to realize that all those clicking noises were the echolocation function of the alien, which I really appreciated.
Absolutely. That was really well done. There wasn't a lot of sort of narration, like over voiceover narration telling us like what happened. Although having said that, the I do have a pet peeve about badly conceived Post-it notes on people's offices on their pin boards. I've seen some pretty, this isn't the worst one I've seen, but there were notes up in the dad's office that said things like, aliens, weaknesses,
yes.
question mark.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, at what point in all of this like survival and, anxiety did he have time to just sit there and go, I think I'll write out this word that I'm thinking right now, but not put an answer. If it would have been maybe even only slightly better if it had been like list of aliens' weaknesses and then, a list of them under it, but it was just weaknesses. And there were a few others like that.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you when he had the time to do that. When Emily Blunt was refreshing her blonde roots. So that's always my annoyance with like post-apocalyptic futures. I'm like, and yet you still found time to dye your hair? Like that drives me crazy. I'm like, I know you're not a real blonde or a real redhead or whatever the thing is. And I'm like, your roots would have been growing out a lot more by now. Like, so you obviously touched them up. And we're supposed to believe in this post-apocalyptic landscape. You find time to dye your hair. That just got on my nerves. It always gets on my nerves. It's a common enough occurrence. Okay, so I think the big chatter about this movie from everyone is sound design. So,
Yes, that was pretty darn good.
So you don't hear a character really talk in this movie until like an hour in.
And when you do, it's actually quite powerful because of it. You know, you're hearing human voices for the first time in an hour. And it really feels more potent that way.
It does. And I heard from somebody, so the girl who plays their daughter is deaf, and did help them with all the signing. Yes.
Oh, well, she was
and I heard that the signing was good. Yeah, she was. From someone in the know, I heard that, there were a couple of small things here and there, but basically they did it well, which to me, having small things be problematic is sort of the point, right? Like, there's no reason to expect, other than the fact that their daughter is deaf, that they would all be like perfect in sign language. So
sure. And she was I don't know, she's not sort of typically beautiful, but she has like something about her, you just have to watch her. She just kind of emotes so well, and in this very, I don't know, she had me in kind of, I don't know, I was very just emotionally impacted by pretty much everything she did, and she never really makes a sound, I guess, technically.
Yeah. No, I did too. I found her really compelling. I found everybody really compelling. And yeah, I mean, to John Krasinski's credit, like, the tension was at 10 for a very long time. It was extremely effective. The editing, the use of sound, the right moments to add music or score.
The imagery.
Yeah, just like, speaking of the imagery, I did think it was hilarious. I was like, well done. When after Emily Blunt has the baby and he's like searching through the house for her, and you get that bloody handprint on the shower door. And it's like, it's an inversion where usually that's the sign of I'm dying, right? When that bloody, I'm being savaged by the monster. And he uses it as actually, I'm safe.
It was a moment of relief. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, nicely done. I appreciated that.
It was. And then one of my favorite shots is the in the evenings, we realize that he sets a fire on the top of this silo. And just a sort of like little, campfire style fire. I don't know, in a dumpster or something. And we look out across the hills and realize that there are families on the opposite side of the valley all doing the same thing. And we see little fires spark up along the landscape as the sun's going down. And we realize this is their way of kind of checking in and saying, that's another day down, guys. We lasted another day. We're all still here. Hang in there. And it's actually that was quite beautiful, I thought.
I thought the movie handled the post-apocalyptic world really well in the sense of balancing the decay with the beauty, right? I mean, they're all in sort of homemade clothes and makeshift rooms a lot of times, but there's just a care and a beauty to every... I really liked the art direction. I thought there was a care and a beauty to like every item in the house, every picture in a frame, but it didn't ever look curated. It didn't look done. It looked authentic and real. And there was a sense of shabbiness and falling apart, but it wasn't oversold. Like, we're going to make this all super bleak and use a gray gel over everything, and this is our post-apocalyptic future.
It didn't look like Walking Dead.
It was really rich and warm. Yeah.
I will, my one sort of, the one criticism I'll give is I felt like it was so spare, throughout the first, 2/3 and even more, probably 3/4 up into the third act. It was just, there was nothing superfluous. Everything was just so economical and subtle. And then as it approached the climax, things just got really sort of over the top. Like just catastrophes just kept, or calamities rather, just kept befalling everybody in rapid succession and not even quite connected. It was just like, and now this is happening. And I'm like, wait, why? Maybe you can tell me why their basement flooded. I'm still not quite sure how it randomly flooded.
There was a broken pipe.
Oh, see, I don't even remember that broken pipe, so there were things that just felt like lightning striking, or, I don't know, and now piranhas are coming for them. And then with the final scene, it was just so, I felt like it was just a bit overdone. I had been so invested the whole time, and maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe I was experiencing emotional exhaustion, so that when this big emotional climax comes, I actually did kind of just go numb and kind of check out, where I kind of, oh, really? We're doing that? It just felt very by the numbers, How did you feel about it?
Yeah, like I was in nervous breakdown territory at that point.
Okay.
And so I heard somebody on the Metro the other day, like two guys were talking about the movie, and I was trying to be like, la, 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 I don't have my headphones in. And the one guy was like, they keep the emotion ramped the whole time that you don't notice the plot holes until after. And I was like, oh, totally. Absolutely. This movie was riddled with plot holes.
Right. Yeah, there were things that I would kind of go, wait, why would... Never mind.
Yeah, I had no ability. That's what I'm saying. I had zero ability to stop and think about anything that was happening. I was in sheer terror the entire time. Like, my brain never... plot holes are my thing, especially... I've said this before. Like, if I get bored at a movie, I just start picking it apart, thread by thread by thread by thread. But if you get my attention, like... Again, this was not a great movie for me to be a critic for, because I was just so emotionally invested that I couldn't have any sort of
be objective about it.
Yeah. I will say this, though, for all the cut to black endings that we've complained about along the way, this one was spot on.
That was great. That's a great moment.
I loved it. It was the perfect ending.
It was
like, and done.
Right. Right. And it totally, I did a 180 there. I don't know what everyone else is thinking, but towards the end we think like, oh God, is this like the end of the zombie movie where they're overrun after everything? And nothing about their circumstances changes. All that changes is the looks on their faces, and you realize what they're planning, what these two women are planning to do. And you just think, right on, go get them. go get them, girls. Yeah.
Absolutely the cliche of the pump the shotgun, but it was true to the nature and the character, and I was like, yep, perfect ending.
Yep. And I think it's made more interesting by the fact that it's, a woman who has, 70 minutes ago just gave birth, and
right.
and her non-hearing daughter, who's 12 or something, or maybe 13, who's got to take these guys out with a hearing aid. It's just like it makes that cliche, like with cast against that. It's like really nice, really nicely done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the controversy at the center, and I remember seeing the previews and thinking, she has a baby? You've got to be kidding me.
Oh. There's like one of the most disturbing moments of the movie is like that baby being put inside a box with it. Oh God. That was me too. I was like, as soon as I saw the box with the baby and the oxygen tank, I was like,
you had me so 100% emotionally invested. And see, that was the reason I wasn't looking for plot holes, because anytime anything let up for like a second, my mind was like, they're gonna put that baby in a box. Like I couldn't get that image. I still could see it like so perfectly in my mind, the image of the box that they're going to put that baby in.
It's just so horrific.
It's so horrific. I couldn't get past it.
Right.
So well done.
Right.
For me, like, so incredibly effective. And I'm not a parent. And I was like, they're going to put their baby in a box. No. Yeah,
like,
no.
right. It's like you don't have the capacity to like process that as a concept. It's just, and then they actually, they place the baby and they're like, oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah. You're right. You're
right.
It
was like an off switch
effective.
for my analytical brain. But I did think, though, given the way the movie sets everything up and what the movie ends up being about, I did actually think it was, when I saw the movie, I was like, yeah, I get why she's pregnant and she's having this baby. And no, I don't think it's as a replacement for the kid she lost.
No.
I think they're like, the Earth's been wiped out, and if we don't people it, like, what's going to happen? I thought it made perfect sense. It didn't bother me when I actually saw the movie. Did it bother you?
Oh, I didn't even, I was looking at it, I read it as them not even having a choice. Like that they were out of any kind of sort of contraceptive measures at that point.
Sure.
I mean, that was just what occurred to me first.
In this sort of watching of this movie, I think that there's, this movie really holds an interesting place in where we are in like dystopian / post-apocalyptic times films. And it's sort of like the anti-movies that matter film, which I think is funny.
Really? In what way?
Most of the sort of post-apocalyptic films, and especially in the horror genre, I mean, The Purge is doing a lot on this front. Like, most films are about how humans need to survive after the sort of breakdown of civilization, or how humans have to overthrow sort of an authoritarian regime, a la The Hunger Games or the resurgence in popularity of 1984, which apparently everyone's been buying since Trump was elected. So you have, sort of The Walking Dead. You have all these things that have been coming out. Snowpiercer.
We can count The Road, I suppose.
Yep, The Road. Like very, most of them are very political. Most of them are very much about how do we survive in this new world, and what political biases, what racism or privilege or ableism,
Classism,
are we carrying into this? Yeah, classism has been a heavy theme into this new world. And I was like, wow, this movie had pretty much zero politics in it. It absolutely wasn't about rebuilding civilization. It was just about the survival of one family.
Mm-hmm. It really was about families.
Yeah.
That was the center. And parenting. Yeah.
Right. And so I thought, I don't know, I sort of feel like, how do I put this? For me, almost everything I've just named, Blade Runner, like, think how many things are coming back, right? Blade Runner is being reboot, Mad Max being reboot, and where in their sort of 70s, 80s counterparts, there was either fear of technology or, Cold War anxieties. Now we're just afraid of climate change and inequality, and more recently, Trump. Mm-hmm. And I thought, everything is terrible. Why do we want to watch a movie about things, or, see a TV show about things being even more terrible? Wouldn't we want to watch?
Yeah, I don't find it escapist. I don't care for it.
You don't find it escapist?
No. I find it distressing. I guess, I say that as a fan of The Walking Dead. I haven't kept up with it recently, but I used to really, really enjoy The Walking Dead. So, but that was, it could have been an exception. I don't normally find myself seeking out those types of stories. Yeah.
So I was sort of thinking like, okay, I mean, the appeal of these movies is definitely the feeling that like we can, if we blow it all up and have to start over some way or somehow, we will get back to a good place, right? Like, we will survive. There will be survivors. Most of them have happy endings, right?
Right. Most do.
So even though, again, it's not a form of escapism I particularly love, like, usually they have a positive message. And so it's thinking about, like, where does Quiet Place, like, fit in our sort of national consciousness right now? And I almost thought, no, this is actually is the perfect answer to our times, right? This is the movie where everything has been amplified, and we realize we've been horribly manipulated by Russian bots. They're getting us all on Outrage 10 at all the time, right? Where we just don't have the capacity to even, the constant barrage of things that are going wrong has just gotten so overwhelming, right? And so maybe just making a totally not political movie, maybe just bringing it down to a very simple space of, let's go back to first principles of home and love. They say grace at dinner, right? Traditional values. Movie very clearly is set in some sort of Midwestern farm-ish town, right? So it has a sort of, I don't want to say conservatism at its center, but a sort of traditionalism that's like, let's just focus on sort of these traditional values to see us through this crisis. Shut out, all the outside world. Acknowledge that it's there, right? Light our signal flares. Say we're here. We're all just trying to get through this together, right? But apart, together and apart.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you touched on the social media aspect. I was thinking about this movie, and I like you noticed, there wasn't a lot political going on. There weren't a lot of sort of societal allegory, or I was thinking,
right.
what is this about? What is this about? And I discussed it with a couple I know, my sister and my brother-in-law, and who have two small children, and they actually felt quite strongly that the movie is about protecting your children from the ravages of social media. That parents,
wow.
Yes, I know, blew my mind too. I was like, oh, okay, because I had been, I like you had been recovering from the movie, and couldn't really wrap my mind around what Krasinski was trying to say, and they brought that up, and they, from what I understand, parents are watching their kids go out into this scary, scary digital world and just get, annihilated online in some cases. They go out, they make a post or a video, and before you know it, they're receiving, 24-hour-a-day bullying. And that leaves them with this choice. Do we silence them? Do we cut them off from communicating in the ways that our society communicates now? For, just to keep them from, attracting any of this antagonism and hostility, but at the price of completely isolating them from their peers and from other humanity? Or do you let them go out and kind of take their hits? And that's just something that, and we can even, they did not mention this, but I suppose you could read it even as leaving your children open to sexual predators online. They make this child sends out a flare, into the digital cyberscape, and this creature comes crashing through the woods and just snatches them up. These parents live in fear of this constantly. It is a constant dread that they're not, what if I'm not monitoring closely enough? What if I'm, not striking the right balance?
Yeah, you've thoroughly blown my mind, and it is actually the perfect metaphor of because it's about noise, right? It's just noise, and it's just quieting out all of the noise, right? All of the world, all of the things except the soft sound of your foot in the sand and, the whisper of your mother's voice, right? So I think that actually is, yes, a beautiful metaphor for all of the ravages of social media. The bullying, the constant sense of outrage, the fake news, the
right.
Yes, the predators, all of it, like all of this noise that we're surrounded by, and that parents are just like, I don't even know what to be afraid of. There's so much to be afraid of. Like, I just need to block it all out.
Right.
Dang.
Like just err on the side of complete just social isolation, like breaking, just like almost outlawing communication in a sense.
Right.
Yeah, no, and right. Like again, I want to reiterate, this was not my idea. I did not pick up on this, but once I was, exploring it, I thought that's it. That's absolutely
it. Yeah.
true.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Like I'm like, I know this is a podcast and I need to say something intelligent, but I'm just having that moment of like the light bulb going off and just like sitting with that truth in my body of like, yes, yes. That's all I can say is
like, amen.
Yes.
Amen. That is what this movie is about.
Yeah. No. Wow. Really cool. I'm so glad you talked to your sister.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you need a minute?
I got nothing. I mean, I'm like, I got nothing else to say about that then,
I think. And that's it, period.
Yeah, cut to black.
I read a think piece in the New Yorker that I'm not even sure I want to recommend it, not because it was poorly written or anything, but just because it seems slightly unfair that this was all this was actually a pro-Trump, pro-white nationalist allegory for all the characters are white and they're all rural and they're all afraid of saying offensive things that will bring down the wrath of like liberals and people of color. I feel like that's kind of grasping at straws. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say yeah, I mean, again, they do have this sort of rural heartland, traditional conservative sort of spin to it, which I absolutely did notice. But that does not sit in truth with me as much as what your sister said, for sure. I don't think it lines up very well to the theme of parents trying to protect their kids or sacrificing themselves for their kids. Like, I don't think that's a partisan value.
Right. And yeah, I didn't really connect as much with it either. Although I will say there is no single person of color in the film, even though I suppose there's only there's six actors, seven actors in total if we don't count the baby,
right.
Who are and they are all white. That is true. But
right.
I suppose if we're considering the geography where the film is set, that could be authentic. But I agree with you where the other reading is I feel like holds more water. I don't know. I'm not sure how the father, making the heroic self-sacrifice at the end. I'm not sure how that plays in. But again, as I mentioned, I felt like that was that particular plot development and the way it was presented was just a bit much. It felt like it was like, insta ending, like you have to be moved by this. And I just don't see how it fits into the message of the movie or anything else. But did you connect with that? You connected with the parental self-sacrifice?
I did. And I think I mean, I don't want to beat a metaphor to death here, so I think there's a strong theme of what your sister was saying. I don't know that it perfectly lines up with everything that happened in the movie, but I think the movie's overall message and the theme is how do I have to, the parents go through so much to protect their children until ultimately one of them is sacrificed. And I think, again, I think it's just the message is, are we doing enough to protect our kids from the crazy world around them? Or are we just playing into it? You know, like the message is strongly like, we need to regroup, we need to recamp, we need to focus on our children and what we're doing for them and how we're helping them grow and thrive in this world, and not how we're, you know, you say the counterpoint of the old man, the neighbor who doesn't sacrifice his life. He selfishly takes his life and puts other people in danger.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, you know, because of grief and tragedy. But there's a very strong sense of like, hey, dude, like what? That's messed up. You know, like that's not okay.
Not necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, you put other people's lives at risk. And it's like, if you keep feeding into this world and this terror, we're destroying ourselves. And if you say, okay, let's all just start with protecting our own kids and our own family, and how does that ripple out into the world, I think is the message. And I like to think it's quote unquote a conservative message if you take, you know, the word at its root of it's sort of a return to a traditional sense of values. But I don't think that's a partisan idea. You know, I think that's kind of the point.
Yes, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And also I feel like you are helping me work through this, like in the moment right now. Emily Blunt, the mother, says, "Who are we if we can't protect our children?" And the father is clearly affected by this when she says it, and ultimately makes the choice. I don't exist if I can't protect my children. I would rather protect them and not exist, as a consequence. But his relationship with his daughter, the conflict between him and his daughter, is kind of developed that he doesn't, at least in her mind, doesn't feel that she's capable to take care of herself. That's at least how she perceives it. And in the end, she doesn't survive by being quiet. They survive by actually making noise and facing the threat head on instead of hiding. So perhaps we could read it as, you know, you don't protect your kids by isolating them and silencing them and keeping them from participating in society. You protect them by teaching them how to take care of themselves. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's true. I think both of those things are true. In the movie where he takes the son, unfortunately, but not the daughter out, to learn to hunt and trap and feed the family. And he's like, this is stuff you're going to have to know how to do. Even though the kid is scared, and the kid absolutely doesn't want to go with every fiber of his being. But I think the ultimate irony for a movie that probably went into production like a couple of years ago is that this movie came out on the heels of the Parkland shooting.
Oh, yeah.
Where all of the kids are looking at the adults and going, your political policies and your faith.
You failed us.
And you failed us. We are getting killed. Be our parents. Don't be Democrats. Don't be Republicans. You know, just be our parents. Pass sensible gun legislation to protect us. And I think this movie couldn't have come out for a movie, again, that is explicitly just not political. It came out in such a moment. Such
pro-gun.
A moment to deliver that message.
Pro-gun at the end.
Yeah, absolutely pro-gun, and just came out at this moment where our nation's teenagers are telling us we need to do better. It's really amazing.
And then again, maybe the movie is just a Rorschach, and we, like so many dystopian pieces, we can all just kind of overlay our own existing beliefs onto them. Not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, authorial intent can always be argued, but does it matter if the movie resonates as a metaphor within us? Like, does it matter?
Oh, yeah.
That's what John Krasinski meant?
First rule of film and art criticism is it doesn't matter what the author meant. Yeah.
Right. So on that note, being that you can actually see something in this if you can get past the adrenaline surging through your body at some point.
Sure.
What would you give
terror.
it for? How do we do the social impact score on this one?
That is a tough one. Okay, so social impact score for A Quiet Place on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being it changed nothing, 10 being the world we once knew is gone forever. Because of its vagueness, I'm going to give it a 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't see, I don't see a lot of people taking an explicit message from this.
Okay. In my heart, I have to give this movie a 5 because it's really it's doing really well, which is awesome. Really excited. It was nearly sold out on a Thursday when I went to see it, weeks after it had come out, right? I think that there is this subtle message of we need to quiet the noise around us that is effective. But just beyond that, like, if this movie is somewhat of a combined score of film and social criticism, like, this is absolutely one of the most suspenseful, gripping movie I've seen since, I think, Zero Dark 30. Like, I wasn't even on the edge of my seat. I was curled up in a fetal ball for, like, the whole thing. Like, it was just, to me, it was incredibly effective and so well done. I got to give it props for that. I can't 1 or 2 something that's just this good of a movie in my heart. So,
you know what? I'm gonna bump mine up for I just remembered just the portrayal of the deaf daughter is so beautiful, and
yes,
it's nice to see
and used
a character like that,
a real deaf actress. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I do want to bump it. I'll bump it up to a 3 just for her. Yeah.
Woohoo. Okay. I'm gonna recommend. Before this was such a big, huge. Everything that came out was, again, dystopian and or post-apocalyptic. There was a really good HBO series of, I believe it's a comic book called Jeremiah.
Oh, okay.
With 90s faves. Luke Perry and Malcolm Jamal Warner are both in this series. Yeah, okay. It was like 2-3 seasons on HBO. Like, it told its story and then it was done. The premise is that some sort of disease kills off everybody over the age of puberty. So it takes place a little bit after the event itself, where the vast majority of 12 and under years olds are now, say, in their 30s, like, but how they had to rebuild society and what happens when you start from scratch as kids with no adults around is an interesting exploration. Yeah, and it's well done. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes and recommend it to your friends. Check out our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com, for links to things we've discussed and to visit our store. If you want to talk to us, leave a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter with our tag @MoviesMatterPod. And check Twitter to find out what movie we're overanalyzing next. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.
Did you ever go on vacation with your family and hope the dance instructor would fall in love with you?
No, but I did think a guy with a giant boombox playing Peter Gabriel outside my window in the middle of the night meant true and undying love.
Listen to our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, where we revisit these movies and it turns out they weren't the best ideas.
What were we thinking?
You can find our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or your favorite podcatcher.
You can also tweet at us at HEAMCAST, Heamcast.